Folks, I'd love to see. I don't know if they've clicked on yet or not.
Yeah, when everyone signs on, I have everyone set to default to mute and then have your video off just for privacy purposes. But if you do want to say hello, you're welcome to turn on your own video or your microphone. But when we actually start the training, I'll request that everyone go back to mute and then turn the video off, just save for bandwidth. Okay. And actually, it looks like people are still coming in here, so let's just wait like 3 more minutes before we get started, Jonathan.
Okay.
Okay.
Hi, Keith.
Hello. Sorry for my appearance. I didn't know you'd be watching me.
You should have seen my hair earlier. It was just like, boom. I've got like coronavirus hair, you know, whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
I take it out of this.
Yeah.
Well, my hair is curly, so the only way to keep it, at all presentable is just to like gunk it down with as much stuff as possible, except a big afro these days. So, and I didn't say hi to you, Sean. Nice to see you. So I know we're going to wait, but one of the things I will be asking everybody, maybe just to chime in on right away, won't spend a long time on this, but one of the things we're going to start off with is sort of just an overview of equipment to record an audiobook. And we'll get into a little bit into microphones and that kind of stuff, but I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole, but more just an overview of that. But with that, everybody has different levels of their familiarity with audio equipment and recording programs and all of that. So I did want to just get an idea of where everybody was at with that.
Yeah,
hey, Jonathan, it's Blair speaking here.
Hi, Blair.
Just drop it in the chat box. Just if you can just, let us know in the chat box how familiar you are with equipment. That would be great. And get used to using that chat box so you can ask questions throughout the course of today's live training.
Okay.
Yes. Awesome. Rodney says he's familiar.
Yeah, and Rodney has mentioned other Hindenburg products before, the Journalist Pro. I'm not sure that if that's the case with everybody else here.
Should I be typing?
Either or, it's fine. I mean, I just kind of want to have everyone get used to the chat box if you haven't used it before.
I have not, so maybe I will use it.
Awesome. Okay. Kathy, thanks for joining us. Okay, we'll wait 2 more minutes and then we'll get started.
Hello, Double D. Apogee in a soundbox. Okay.
Who are you seeing, Jonathan?
I am seeing Rodney,
Sean. Here we go.
Sean, Keith, Double D, aka Denise.
Oh, okay. There you go. I was like, where'd that come from? I was like, what? Okay.
I'm now
very
seeing
cool.
Kat and Roger down here at the bottom of my screen.
Yeah. Is it Elia? Awesome. Okay. Let me share my screen here real quick and kind of get this started in just a minute. Okay. Very cool. Yep. Definitely want to be mindful of everyone's time here today. And thank you so much for joining us. Okay. So, Jonathan, you want to get started today?
Sure.
Okay.
So we're going to start off Okay, so I'm just reading through everybody's comments here. So some folks are familiar. They have microphones. Some record music. They have, know what preamps are and that kind of stuff. Other folks are totally new to Hindenburg. Audiobook recordings. Okay, so maybe we'll start off here. I won't go too deeply into things that it seems like most people already know, but we will start with basic things. So
Sure. So let me just give a quick intro here to what we're doing and make sure everyone's
sure.
on the same page. Today, what we're going to be doing is a live training for HABC, Hindenburg Audiobook Creator, and what we'll be covering specifically is recording. We'll be covering pre-production, using an Epub, and tips for narrating. All right. Okay. My name is Chuck Wang, and I will be doing the moderating for today's live training. If you have questions, just populate those up in the chat box, and you can find the chat box option located at the bottom of your screen. And I'll make sure that Jonathan answers your questions towards the end of today's live training. And just quick background on me real quick. I am Hindenburg's marketing manager, and I've created 200 podcasts with Hindenburg Journalist Pro. It's honestly it's the easiest way to record, edit, and publish your podcast. And I can, on behalf of Jonathan, I can say that it's the same thing for Audiobook Reader. It's going to be the easiest way for you to record, edit, and publish your audiobook. Okay. And Jonathan, let's tell everyone a little bit about you and your background.
Okay. I'm Jonathan Hurley. I am a musician, as a lot of people in the audio world tend to be. And for the last 5 years or so, I've been working at a school for the blind where in the recording studio, where we publish a large volume of material, both books, magazines, different periodicals, and it's part of the Library of Congress. And we were using other programs and switched to Hindenburg a while ago, and it did, basically revolutionize how we were doing things. And to use Chuck's word, the word's going to come up a lot today is easy. It was just easy to use and made things, more streamlined because, we had to get things out the door. And audiobooks take a long time and are, labor intensive. And it was just like the right tool for us. So over the years, I've been training people, to both narrate audiobooks and get better at that, and the editing and post-production and all that as well. So that's me. Now I'm usually in the room with people, so this is very strange for me, but hopefully it'll all go smoothly. All right. And here's where I would say, are there any questions or anything like that? But there's nobody here. Everybody's muted. Okay. Children's book author, want to record my audiobook, post-production, various softwares. Okay. So it sounds like most people are familiar. There are a few people that maybe haven't used a program like this before, but many folks have. So why don't, Chuck, if you're okay with it, I'm going to do the screen share here.
Please.
Okay. Okay, can everybody see Hindenburg? So this is Hindenburg, the ABC version of it. Can everybody see that? Yes, good to go. Okay, so other folks talked about recording in Logic, I saw, and there was a few other programs. I use Logic as well, for other things. And so the thing about Hindenburg is that it's designed to do these tasks specifically. So if you're using Pro Tools or some other program, it can be very cumbersome, and there are so many options for things. This is, as you can see, there's one track here, and there's this manuscript, which we'll get to in just a little bit. So we'll get to all that. But in terms of the gear and the equipment that you need to do this, you know, the microphone part of it, you can do this with interfaces and different types of mics. You can even do it with your computer audio. I'll probably do that a little bit today. I have just a little SM57 here, okay? So just to demystify some of that stuff, some of these terms, and some of that for the folks who aren't familiar, with microphones, you know, you can have a microphone that's a $50 microphone and a $10,000 microphone. And there are sort of two general families of them. There are condenser mics, which record sort of the room sound or a bit more of that. And there are these microphones called dynamic mics. And dynamic mics, and they say them right on them most of the time. It tells you which family it's in. And so
It looks like Jonathan is frozen there. And this can happen. These little glitches can happen. He'll come back here in just a little bit. I'm going to take over for 1 second.
Podcast. 1 second.
Jonathan, you froze out there for a second.
Okay.
Right. So you froze out for just right after you were introducing your microphone.
Okay. So there are two, did you get that, the two families thing?
No, we were just getting into the condenser and dynamic mics.
Okay. So condenser mics sort of record more of the room. If you're recording cellos or something like that, that makes a lot of sense. If you're recording your voice, typically people want to stick to dynamic microphones. If you see podcasts or videos of radio shows and things, and you see the microphone there and somebody speaking into it, you probably see the same 2 or 3 over and over and over again. And those are dynamic microphones. Okay, so the thing about those, if you were to plug a condenser microphone into one of those interfaces that it seems like most people have, and what an interface is it just allows your microphone to come into your computer, okay? Because you can't plug a microphone directly into the computer. So if you plug into that interface with a condenser microphone and you're hoping that it works and it doesn't, it's because it requires this extra bit of power. So that if you plug one of these dynamic microphones in, it will work. Now, because it's dynamic, it requires a bit of power. And sometimes when you plug it in, you think, well, wait a minute, I thought this was supposed to be a good microphone and it doesn't seem to be doing all that much. It's because it requires more kind of juice. And that's what a preamp is. It just takes the microphone and makes it so that it's recording at its optimal range, okay? So just a basic overview of microphones and all that kind of stuff. I don't think that you need, you know, a $10,000 microphone. You could record with proper performance and technique. You could record using a very inexpensive microphone. If you have a great microphone and your recording technique is bad or your narration is sloppy or whatever, it really doesn't matter. So the greater thing is that the equipment is just to enhance hopefully what you're already doing well, okay? So that's that. Obviously you need a computer to run the program, and you probably should have a decent set of headphones if you don't already have that. And when you're recording, you should absolutely be hearing yourself through your headphones, and that actually will affect your performance. If you're not used to hearing yourself and you're trying to narrate books or anything, it can be a bit of a jarring thing because we're not used to hearing ourselves talking into our ears, of course. So if you're a bit too loud in your headphones, typically you will project less. And it's just a natural thing to be aware of. So you need to be hearing it to hear what the microphone is picking up, but you also need to have it at a volume that is so that it makes sense. So you're not shrinking down while you're hearing yourself in your own ears, okay? Does that make sense to everybody? I'm just so used to audience participation here. I'm just gonna assume.
Yep, everyone's saying yes so far, Jonathan.
Okay. Okay, so let's get into the program itself. So as Chuck said, simplicity, ease, that's the idea with Hindenburg, and it being tailored to the different, the journalism has, certain features, and this has certain features, but some parts of it are the same. So in this, it's separated in these two windows here. The window you're used to seeing, you'll see the waveform, and the manuscript window here, okay? And the controls are the same. They're here in the bottom left that you would see in most recording programs. Start, stop, go back to the beginning, all that kind of stuff. But it also automatically maps to your keyboard, and you could do the vast majority of recording here with, audio, with voice, with just 3 buttons. There's just record, start, and stop. Record, stop, and playback. Okay, and it automatically maps them to your computer, either Mac or PC, to the arrows and the space bar. So once you have, and this is the track, the narration track, and like most programs, you'd need to record enable it. And you can see that once I've done that, it's picking up the microphone. Another thing I should mention is that it's very easy. I'm using an Apogee element for my interface, and I'm using this microphone. But if I were using the computer mic, it would pick that up automatically and or default to anything you plug in. So if I was, Hindenburg's really great about that with, compared to, Pro Tools or other things, where if you're changing interfaces or doing anything like that, it just automatically sets that up for you. So it's pretty easy to use, okay? But once I have record enabled the track, which is this track, and you can see the meter here on the left side and on the bottom. If I press the forward arrow, it's going to start recording. Okay, and that's me talking. I'm just going to zoom out a little bit. And the zooming out and all that stuff is pretty easy. So the waveform looks a little bit different in Hindenburg if you're not used to it than in other recording programs, other DAWs. And what you're seeing here is usually the top half of how waveforms look in other programs. So that's all it is. And sometimes folks, it's a little strange what they're looking at. So while it's recording, it's in red, and that's recording me speaking. Now I'm going to stop it, and you're going to see a couple of things happen. You're going to see the color of this recording change, and you're going to see something else happen. Okay. So that is it auto adjusting to the specs that you will need the audiobook to be at when you export the book. I assume that most people are going to be exporting their books to through ACX, which is Audible's company for taking in their audiobooks, and they have specific guidelines that they want the audiobooks to be at. They want the background noise to be at a certain ratio, and they want the volume to be at a certain place. And so an audiobook, now I just recorded 40 seconds of me yammering on, but an audiobook, is going to be 10 hours with multiple times, many, many sessions. And so there are many variances that can happen over that time. If it takes you 4 months to record an audiobook, your audio could be all over the place. That's from session to session, but even in a session, if you record for an hour, it might be different at the beginning or the end or take to take. So this auto leveling feature kind of takes that away, okay? It just automatically does that and brings it up or down to where it needs to be. So that is a huge feature and a huge time saver, okay? So after it's recorded, the track is highlighted, this segment of the track. We'll do a couple and you'll see how it's in segments. And so this is what I'm doing here is like a fade and other things we can get to in other parts of the, yeah. Chuck,
Jonathan, real quick, let me just back up. From a graphical perspective, just because some people they won't be able to see all the shortcuts that you're using. To arm the track, what did we do?
We went over here to the left side of the screen, and underneath where it says narration, there is an icon that looks like a bullseye. And when you click that, you'll see that it's glowing red.
Perfect.
And
And then afterwards to actually record, just from a graphical perspective, what did we do next?
I pressed, and I'm going to try to do things with the mouse. I should do that. I'm just so used to some
Right.
key, but I pressed the forward arrow or the right arrow on my laptop.
And then to stop, you hit the...
I hit the back arrow.
You can also hit the space bar.
And you can also hit the space bar.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
And then as far as actually recording through a mouse, and once you're on the track to record, what do you do? You hit that red button below?
Track, you hit this red dot, and then you would hit. So while it's recording, it's in red. Okay.
Perfect.
So that's me recording again, and we're going to talk about this in a second, recording with pre-roll and how that was set up there. But that's how you would use the controls that are at the bottom as opposed to using the buttons on your keyboard. Good point, Chuck. Okay, and you can see it there doing its auto level thing again. Okay, and so as you can see it now, we've done two separate recordings, and it's in two separate segments. And when you have you're going to keep doing starts and stops throughout the course of an audiobook, you can have hundreds and hundreds of these segments. Okay. And that's how it looks in Hindenburg. So I'm just zooming in and zooming out in the tracks. Let's just talk about that other thing for a second. When I do this recording, it's going to play a little bit before wherever I put the cursor, this white line. So wherever I put the white line in the track is where it's going to pick up recording. Now, let's say I'm reading along in a book and I start a new sentence and I make a mistake. And so I've made the mistake and I need to go back to the beginning of that sentence that I screwed up. And I need to hear in the track to know where I am. So what I do is zoom out of the track and I click above in this black area. If you click on the track, you can be clicking on the different segments, which you need to do for editing and for other things. But for this, it's easier to just click above the track. And this is where you press the space bar, which is the playback button, to hear what you just were doing. Okay, so that's me recording again, and we're going to talk about this in a second, recording with pre-roll and how that was set up there. But that's how you would use the controls that are at the bottom as opposed to okay, so let's just say I was going to do a pickup here, meaning like this is where I want to come in with this new sentence. And I'm going to say, my dog is really great. All right. So let's say it was here. And I'm going to find that spot where I say, like a genius. And I'm going to do a pickup there. So I'm going to zoom out. It's just a habit for me. And I'm going to do a recording again. And you'll see that wherever I put that cursor, it's going to automatically start the recording a couple of seconds beforehand. And the reason for this is so that you can hear what you had just previously done and match yourself in the flow of time. Okay? So I'll just give you an example of that. The controls that are at the bottom as opposed to, my dog's really great. It doesn't really match what I was saying before, but that's the idea. You heard what you were doing before. You got to the end of a sentence. There was a natural pause there. You stopped, you started the recording again and picked it up. And then when you stop, it does its auto level thing. And if you're to go back, and it automatically, that's my dog, it automatically crossfades as well, meaning that if you do the pickup right, and we'll get to that a little bit more later, you can actually do this in a way that you don't have to go back in and edit it later. Now, for one edit here and there, that's maybe not that big of a deal. But over the course of an audiobook, if it's hundreds of edits, that matters quite a bit, okay? So you listen back to the pre-roll after you got done recording, or I'm sorry, listen back using playback and hear what it sounds like. That are at the bottom as opposed to, my dog's really great. It doesn't really match what I was saying before, but that's the idea. All right, so you get it. So that's the idea with that, okay? So that's the basic setup, controls and things like that. Now, every recording program is going to have these things be set up a little bit differently, but some of this does exist in other programs. So let's say I did a recording like what I just did there, and I didn't like the take. I didn't like how it went. I mean, you can undo it just like you would do most things. I hit Control Z, or there are these buttons up here, undo, redo, etc. Okay. There are some of these other options here. One of them is unique to Hindenburg, which is this split point. Okay. And the reason that's there is because, as you see, it's in these different segments that you can highlight and grab and that kind of thing. Well, if you wanted to make an additional segment somewhere, you can use that and make a split point. And then you could grab that. Now, we can get into why you would want to do that a bit later, but just some options for things there, okay? All right. So let's talk about the other thing, the other, side of this screen, or the bottom half of this screen, which is the manuscript. This is what makes this a little bit different than other recording programs. So you're recording an audiobook. It's text, and it's a lot of text. And so, again, if you're doing this in, let's just say, Pro Tools or whichever recording program, you've got your track of audio of you reading the book, and the book is separate from that. So if you wanted to go to different parts of that book for whatever reason, like you wanted to go back and hear something that happened at chapter 2, but you're at chapter 8, well, that's going to be difficult to find. You're going to be hunting around. So one of the ways that this works, and this also has to do with the exporting, which is stuff we'll get into another time, but you can set up this manuscript to work in a couple of different ways. So what you could do is you could put in the structure of the book, meaning the parts and the sections and things like that. And books can be very complicated with their structure. If you have a cooking book that has, let's say, seasons, and for each season there were like, soup, salads, whatever, and in each one of those are the recipes. Well, that's 3 different levels of things that you could navigate to. And that's something we're going to talk about, which is these navigation points. So what we can do is we can set up a book. Before we start recording, you can fill in the manuscript of all the parts in your book. For example, part 1, chapters 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'll do that in a second. Part 2, so on and so forth. Okay, and then as you're going in, you put in these navigation points. And once you do that, you can go to different parts of the file very easily, okay? So let me just give you an idea of that in real life. But that's conceptually what it is. Okay. Chuck, do you hear like a high-pitched sound every now and again?
I do. There is a little bit of a buzzing, and I'm not sure where that's coming from. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so up here, I'm just going to use the mouse to go to the upper right-hand part of this toolbar up top. You see here, there are these letters, parts, chapters, and all that. By clicking on those, it will fill in these parts of this manuscript. I'm just going to turn off the record enable part because we're going to be in the manuscript part for a bit. So, and you can custom make these very easily. Just a few drop-down menus up here where you can change that, what's in the book to populate this. Or you can click down in here and, part, and you can type in whatever you need to say. Part 1, begin, okay? And that's one way to do it. There are also keyboard shortcuts. I'm hitting the numbers on my keyboard here.
Jonathan, can I have you back up a little bit?
Sure.
Viveke asked for you to go a little slower. So if we can kind of start from the chapters, how you set the chapters up.
It's just
Sure.
can I say it's when you move the arrow it's really difficult to see where are you now because you're so used to it. So you say, oh, I click here, and I just don't get where you click.
Oh, okay, sorry about that.
Okay, yeah, fine.
Sorry, my bad. And thanks for speaking up because that's the only way I'll know. The only way I'll learn. Okay, so I'm talking about the upper right corner where there are these where it says part, chapter, H3, etc. And the H and all that, well, that means is header. So in your book, there'll be parts or chapters, and every book is different, and that's what the H's mean. So I went over here to the file drop-down tab up here, and went down to the bottom into properties, and it brings up this. Now, this is some stuff that we'll get to at another training session, which has to do with exporting the book out to ACX. But in this, one of the options that you have is to change some of these headings. So you could pre-type in, and I've done that for part and chapter, but you could pre-type those in so that every time you hit one of these icons or you click on it, it will populate with just saying part, chapter, etc. Or the other option is, even if these all said, for instance, I'll just put in one that says H3, which is header 3. If you wanted to, if you just left those alone and didn't do anything, you could still come down here and title this whatever you want, okay? All right, so hopefully that makes sense there. And what you would do with the manuscript of the book, or an option that you could do, is you can fill out all of the parts of the book. Part 1, which let's say it had a few chapters in it, and then part 2, and again, you could, change these as you're going along. And that part 2 had a few chapters in it. And you did that all beforehand. Then when you were ready to record and you came up here and you started off and you started to record just as we were doing before, it's going to, you have this option of assigning something called Nav Points, which are these little yellow arrows that will correspond to the manuscript of the book, okay? And when we do that, you'll see I'll be able to go to the different chapters in the book, okay? So we're at the beginning. And by the way, any of this can easily be changed. If you got a nav point off or something went wrong, it's very, very easy to fix all these things, just like hitting the undo button, okay? So I'm at the beginning of the book, I'm gonna record, and I've already filled in the manuscript. And I'm gonna just do the same things I did before, which is I'm gonna press, I'll do it not on the actual. So when I'm actually, while I'm speaking, I'm gonna hit the same record button. I'm gonna do it on my computer, and you'll see that it's going to put in these nav points, okay? So here I go, and it puts in the first one right away. And the reason for that is that that's the beginning of the book. It has to go there. It can't go anywhere else, okay? So, I've started the book. Here we are at the beginning. I'm going on and I'm reading and I'm reading. And maybe I go through all the things that are in the, there's the prologue or anything like that. And then I get to chapter 1. And I'm gonna hit the same button that I used to record. I'm just going to press that button again, and it's going to put in the next nav point. And if you look down in the manuscript, do you see how part 1, the beginning, is being highlighted right now? Everything that I'm saying is in part 1. When I go to the next part, I'm gonna hit that button, you'll see that it goes down to the next chapter, and it put in that nav point. You see in the edit window, there is a second yellow arrow there. That's that next nav point. So I'm in chapter 1 and I'm reading along, And that's all happening. And then I get to chapter 2. And here I am, and I'm in chapter 2 and going along. And then I do the next chapter. And let's say then I'm still doing my thing, I'm reading, and I get to the next, I'm ready to start part 2. Same process. Because I've already filled it out, it just assigns everything and it goes along with the manuscript. So I'm going to stop recording now. I'm going to show you what this does.
Jonathan, so how do we skip from chapter to chapter? Is it a manual process? Is it an automatic process? Is it a button that we push?
We pushed the record button, the same button that you're using to be recording. While stop recording now. I'm going to show you what this does. So while it's recording, if you hit that button again, and I'm doing this on my keyboard, it is the right arrow key. It puts in that next navigation point, which goes along with the manuscript. All right. And then when I have done that, and I've got those in there, let's say I wanted to go to different parts in the manuscript, chapter 1 and chapter 2 and all of that. So if I click on this, and you have to imagine also that this could be a book that's 10 hours long and you need to find, something in the middle or something in the beginning. When I click on these different parts, if you can see, it assigns everything and it goes along with the manuscript chapter. And let's say then I'm still doing my thing, I'm reading, and I get to 2. And here I am. And do you see it going to different parts in the file? And right here, we're back at the beginning.
What about pages, Jonathan? What about pages?
Yeah, you can do the same thing with pages.
Okay.
Right here is a page option. And you can assign pages in the same way.
Fantastic.
And maybe here, so that's one way to use this. And that's probably the way of using it that I'm most familiar with. And again, also with that, maybe we don't want to get too far into this, but there are different levels to a book. And when you export it, you could export it as just the parts or just the chapters or anything like that later on, very easily. So the book and the file is just easy to manage in that way. Okay. There's another feature that's kind of similar to this or related to this. We'll get into this more when we talk about editing, but there is something that's unique to Hindenburg, which is this favorites window. Okay. And so what the favorites window is used for a few different things, but in the audiobook world, definitely for editing. So the reason for that, we'll get into later, but basically you can edit and you can have this there as you go along. It's much easier to use than having to create other tracks and inserting room tone and things like that. But let's say I'm reading my book and in chapter 2, there's a character Bernstein or Bernstein. Oh, I don't really know, but I said something in chapter 2. I made up my mind on what that was, or I looked it up or whatever. And so I know it's Bernstein, but then in chapter 8, he comes back and he hasn't been there for a month and a half of me narrating. I haven't said that name for a while. So I don't remember how I said it. Was it Bernstein or Bernstein or whatever? One way is to go back to the chapter and do what we're doing now and listen to it and read through the text. Another way is if you think that a name like that, you looked it up or anything like that, and you think it might come back in the future, or you might forget how you pronounced it, you can actually just copy it into this favorites window and have it for reference. So what I would do is, let's say I said the name somewhere in here, and I just highlighted it. I made a little highlight, and I dragged it into the favorites window, and it's going to say whatever that is, just for a future reference. So if I was in chapter 8 and I was like, I know this guy, he came up in chapter 2, but I don't remember how I said it, you can hear what you said before. It's Bernstein, buddy. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense there. Does it, this is definitely what I would ask. Does that make sense to everybody? I'm going to imagine that you all said yes. So let's talk about another, okay, thank you for the thumbs up. Let's talk about another way that you can do this. Okay, I'm just going to start a new file. No, I don't want to save. Okay, you can use this. I imagine that many of you have made EPUBs of your books, or they're in other formats. And instead of reading it either off a tablet or the text itself and managing the program, you can actually open the book, the text of the book in the program and read it off the screen. And you can do the same kind of thing with those nav points. You just kind of assign them as you're going along, and then you can go back to each individual sentence if you want to, okay? So in order to do that...
Jonathan, real quick, just by chance, if people don't know what an EPUB is, what is an EPUB?
It's a digital format of the text of the book. Okay, so going over here, I am just going to scroll the top to the option which is open in the toolbar. And some of these other things we'll get to: cut, copy, paste, clear, different modes you can record in. There's all kinds of things you can do with this. So for instance, when we would do magazines, a magazine might have 50 articles that we would do, and they're all being read by different narrators at different times. We would have this set up so that somebody would come in and read something that was at the beginning, and because of scheduling all those people, they're not going to read it in order. So you would have people read out of order, but because we set up the manuscript, you could actually they plug in automatically where they go. And then when everybody's done their parts, the magazine just kind of plays from beginning to end. That's pretty amazing. I mean, that saved, I can't even imagine how many hours from when we used to have to put it all together and assemble it versus the way that's, it automatically fills it up. So that's in a different mode, which you can get to another time. But here's another way that you could do this with, if you just wanted to record your book and you had an EPUB version of it, digital version, you can open that document. In this case, it's going to be Bridget Jones's diary. And you can see that then goes into the manuscript. And that is there on the bottom. All right. I'm just going to scroll up a little bit so you can see it, but there's the actual, text of the book from the company, what it looks like. And so it's going to work the same way. So since that's there, I'm then going to go up to my narration window up here, and I'm going to press record again, just like I was doing before. I'm going to press the same button, which is this, it's one button. It's the same button as record, and it's going to be putting in those nav points. So I'm recording now, and as I am cycling through and I say Bridget Jones's diary, I'm going to hit the button again. By Helen Fielding. I'm going to hit the button again. Contents. New Year's resolutions. January, an exceptionally bad start. February, Valentine's Day massacre. March, okay. And it works in the same way. If I clicked in the manuscript into the text here, so I just have to move the screen around a little because of Zoom. But if I clicked into some of these other parts, so I can do it. Oh my God. Hang tight. Actually, you can just take the manuscript out altogether, or you could put it on top or anything like that that you want to. And if I went to contents, New Year's resolutions, January, an exceptionally bad start. So it's a really convenient way to navigate, which is what these little yellow icons here are, to navigate the different parts of the book. And you can even go in later and alter those nav points and move them around and all that kind of stuff. So I'm getting the light here from Chuck. We wanted to go over, you know, different things that audiobook creator can do, and you know, different facets of it and all that kind of stuff. But we'd love to hear from you, questions that you have, and maybe we can answer them and clear them up. And
oh, actually, Jonathan, my light was saying that we have 15 minutes left in the session, and then there'll be Q&A after the fact. So there's going to be one more card from me. You still have 15 minutes to continue.
Okay. So let's talk about how to cut down on editing and just general narration tips, tricks, whatever you want to say.
Actually, Jonathan, while we're doing a little break here, a quick question that came up was, how do we prevent the clicks from being recorded when you hit record?
The clicks of putting in the nav points.
Wait, so when you hit record or you click something and the actual click sound appears, how do you get rid of those?
So let me record something right now, and let's get rid of them. This I would do it by editing them out, which is very easy to do. But what you would want to be aware of is that any noise that you are making while you're narrating is in the audio. So if I'm talking and then I make a click and then I keep talking, it's not that big of a deal because you can get it out very easily afterwards. And I'll show you that right now. So, you know, you do want to be mindful of that. If you are doing this all yourself and running the program in the same room where you're recording. Okay, so let's say I'm recording, and let's do that manuscript thing again. I'm just gonna set this all back to normal here, okay? And I'm gonna put in some parts and chapters and that kind of thing, like we had it before, okay? And I'm gonna go back to the beginning. Okay. And so I'm up here, I've clicked the record enable button, and I'm going to start from the top. And there is going to be a button click sound because there has to be. Okay, so part one, something blah, 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 I'm reading along, I'm doing, you know, my part and all of that. And I go to the next chapter. Chapter 2. This happens and that happens and that happens. Okay, let's stop here for a sec. So we're gonna go back and listen to this and we'll hear that click sound. Chapter 2. So it's definitely there. And this is where we're gonna get into some of the editing and where Hindenburg is you know, really good with this stuff and easy to use. So let's say I just wanted to get rid of this sound where this click is. What I would do is highlight it. And what I've brought up here, by the way, let me just back up a step, is I went up here to view, I clicked on it, and there are some different options of things that you can bring up. One is the toolbars, workspace, clipboard, all that business. Markers, which is something that's where you can put in markers if you want to leave yourself notes or anything like that in the file, and then you can see the list of those markers, which is really helpful for certain types of projects, or if you want to mark things for editing later on or anything like that. And it's very helpful then to see the list of all the markers that you put in. And I went down here and I selected favorites and brought up this favorites window. And so what I have in the favorites window, it's basically a window that has different clips of audio that you want to put in there that you then can take and put them into your file. So you can take, like I said, that Bernstein clip that we heard earlier, and I could take that and put that in if I wanted to actually. So let's say you did have something reoccurring in your book. I don't know, it was where you said, let's say you had somebody else, for whatever reason, saying, Chapter 1 in a really strange voice or something, and you recorded your friend saying that, you wanted that for all the chapters. you could have that all here in this favorites window and then just grab them in one at a time and just plop it down. So that's one option you can do. But probably the most common way to use this as you're going along is to use it with editing. And so these two options that I have up here where it says 3-second room tone and 1-second room tone, the RT means room tone. And what room tone is just recorded silence. And it's different than real digital silence, meaning a blank space. So if I highlighted something and cut it out, oops, and there was just a hole there, that's going to sound very, very cut off and abrupt. So what room tone is recorded silence, so that you, and I would recommend doing this in the room that you're recording your book, is just record a couple seconds of silence, okay? And then what you can do is you can put it in, and you can do a couple of options. One is pasting and one is inserting. But you can put it in these spaces where you want to clear something up, like this click, which we're gonna do, or you wanted to actually add some more space and or take things away, okay? So what we're gonna do is we had this click sound here, which I'm gonna go back in the file and listen to it. Chapter 2. And we didn't like that, okay? So without messing with adding in space or making this longer or anything, which we can do, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna highlight the space that I want to clean up, okay? And I actually can see how long that highlight is in this bottom right corner of the screen where the mouse is hovering over. There are a couple of these gauges here, in, out, and time. And what that means is the in is up here, is the green, think go, and the out is the red arrow there. And so that means stop. So just think go to stop. So how much is that time from green to red, or go to stop? And that the answer to that is down here on the bottom in this little, the last line here. And so that's 2 seconds. It's 2.0 something seconds. So that's about 2 seconds of space. And I have my 3-second room tone up over here. So even though that the 3 seconds is longer than 2, where I've highlighted it, if I'm going to paste it, it's just going to cover the area that I've highlighted, okay? If you can think about a wall, you're saying just paint this wall. Don't paint the whole house. I only want this section. And so I'm going to click on this. I'm going to do a right click, and this drop-down menu appears. And if I go to this third option, and all this, there are keyboard shortcuts for all this stuff, and you go to paste, it puts in the room tone and it clears that up. So now when we listen to that, that click sound is going to be gone. And I go to the next chapter. Chapter 2. And that's how you would do that. So that's how you can do all this as you're going along. And by the way, let's say you put in that nav point, then you go on and you read chapter 2. And that's what you did that day. And you're like, oh, I want to go back to the beginning and take out that click and clean up that heading. Well, it's really easy. You just go to the manuscript and click on the different chapter you want. And you can find it anywhere in the book. And then you go there and you do that. You highlight it and you right click and then you put in the room tone. And let's say where that was, you didn't like it and you wanted to move around where you say chapter 2. Let's say you want it right on top of it. Chapter 2. You can do that. You can move this nav point around. And there are many easy tools with, let's say, this space that you put in, you just feel like it's too long or it's too short or anything like that. Well, let's say it's too long. You could do another one of these highlights, which we just did here. And all I'm doing, by the way, when I do that is I click up in the black area above the file and I press down and I drag. That's different than if you click around in the file and you don't drag and the cursor follows you. And so with that highlight, let's say you did the highlight, but you did it in the wrong spot. You're like, what do I do? It's really easy. You just press the escape button and it'll go away. So the other thing you can do is you can just grab, once you hover your mouse over one of these icons, your multi-tool here turns into a hand, and you can grab this and adjust as well. Okay. But if that space is just a little too long, you can highlight there and go over here to this cut option, and it'll cut it away. And you saw the file adjust to that. I'm going to undo it. So here's where the file was. We'll do a bigger one here. And I've done this highlight here, and I cut away. And so now that space is a lot less. Go to the next chapter. Chapter 2. This happened. Okay. So those are a number of things that you can do, but that's how I would deal with putting in the clicks and all of that. And by the way, you're going to have to do that. That's a heading, a chapter heading for Amazon or for Audible, I should say, or any of these other platforms. You're going to have to do editing for those headings anyway. Okay. So I want to say, are there any questions? But I know that there will be some. So let's just talk about one other thing with going back to that pre-roll business that we were talking about earlier. So just to remind everybody, wherever you put the cursor, and you can do that by clicking above the file in this black area. And once you do that, and if the track is armed and ready to record, and it is, and you can see that over here with this red icon, when you press record, which I'll do here, down in the bottom left, it's going to record where that white line is, but it's going to do this pre-roll and play a couple seconds before. Now it's going to do that automatically, and you can change how much time you want there, if you want a little bit of time or a lot or whatever. But let's just talk about some of those things of how you would do a pickup, and this is just for audiobooks in general. Chapter 2. Here I am saying chapter 2 and dibby-dibby-diboo. Okay, so that's an example of a bad way to do a pickup, and the reason is if we go back and listen to it and play the file. Chapter 2. Here I am saying chapter 2 and dibby-dibby-diboo. Okay, so not great, right? And the reason it's not great is that we waited until we started to record to make a really audible sound of that we're starting this new recording. The idea with doing a pickup is that the listener later on can't tell that you started and stopped. It just sounds like one smooth thing. So we're going to do that again. And let's say it was just like that. I did a bad take and I want to do it again. I'm actually just going to go over here on the top with my mouse hovering over the toolbar and press undo. And the cursor is going to go right back to where I found it before. And it's just going to get rid of that take that we didn't want to keep. Okay, so now I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm just going to press start on the record. It's going to be recording, and I'll do this pickup hopefully a little bit more naturally. Chapter 2. If I come in now, hopefully I match somewhat where I was before in terms of volume and flow and all of that. And we'll go back to listen. Chapter 2. If I come in now, hopefully I match somewhat where I was before in terms of volume and flow and all of that. Okay, so that's how that works. And that's a way that you can, if you get used to doing that, you can eliminate having to go back in and edit all of your starts and stops. You can actually get rid of that in the flow of time. What we would always say to people is, if you take the time and do this while you're doing it, you're making the final version of the book as you go along. And if that doesn't sound like a big deal, it might not, maybe when you're, again, an hour into a book. Once you're 9 hours into a book, it's a really big deal. And again, if you have like 50 books going on, it's a very, very big deal. So this being able to do, this program being able to work this way is, you know, it was huge for us, and it continues to be just the sensible way to make an audiobook. And there are a lot of different ways that you can use it to tailor it to, you know, how you want it. So, all right, it is question and answer time.
It is. And why don't we do this? Why don't we have the people who have actually asked questions and jump on to ask questions themselves? And let's start with Denise. But we're gonna, if you have questions, go ahead and pop and just drop them in the chat box. We have to cut this off here pretty soon because we have to be mindful of people's time. But Denise had a question about, do you build this before importing your manuscript? And I'm asking this a little bit out of context. So Denise, if you want to hop on it and ask, that'd be perfect.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Denise.
Okay. So I started doing my audiobook, and I realized on the tutorial I watched that you guys had shown that there was a sidebar where this part and chapter and all that was. And when you click on it, I got the impression that there was a pre-sized pause when you used this nav part and chapter that you were just showing us. It looked a little different, and I was under the impression that when you clicked from one to the next, it automatically gave you that chapter pause.
No, it doesn't do that. You have to put in the time. Do you mean like when you put in a chapter, it automatically puts in 3 seconds of
Right.
space? It doesn't do that. It directs you to where those are, but you then have to put in the space there.
So so now I have my manuscript imported into the program. Then I come in and I put in part chapter. I manually do all that, and then read, click to the next one, and then go back and do that, what you said, cut and paste the seconds in there in between each chapter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's one way of doing it. And I didn't get into this here, but let's just say we use that same example I was using before, which is right here where I say, whatever it is, chapter two, okay? And the bit of time that's there is 2 seconds. And that's because that's what was there before, and I just pasted over it. So it didn't add any time or take any away. It was just what was there. But what you can do is you can, instead of having this time in there, if I wanted to make them all 3 seconds, by the way, the reason I have 3 seconds there is that that's what we would put for our chapters as like a uniform thing. And the reason we have 1 second is that that's what we would do after the heading. So I'd say chapter 3, maybe a second of space, and then the text would start. So I would highlight the area that had, you know, in this case, remember the click was there, and I'm actually going to cut it away and go over here. And instead of hitting paste, I'm going to hit insert, and then it's going to put in the full 3 seconds of time. And you can see there at the bottom of that segment that it says 3 seconds. And you can also see by the time indicator down here in the bottom right, 3 seconds. So that's the way that all of your chapters can be uniform. And so here's where I say actually chapter two. And what I would do the same thing. I would highlight that bit, cut it away, and put in the 1 second afterwards before the text starts, so that it sounds like this. Chapter 2. Second to pause. If I come in now, and then the text would start. And so if you were to look at the book, like look at the in Hindenburg, all the chapters look identical, and it's a really easy way to do that. But no, it doesn't do that automatically. It doesn't put in the headings for you. That you do have to do some editing there, but it's
Thanks.
easy. Yeah, sure.
I'll play around with it. Thanks.
Yeah, the favorites window is, it's really pretty great with that stuff, and also keep in mind you can, move these nav points and all that kind of business too. What you're going to want to do if you're cutting anything away, actually, you're going to want to move it out of the way and then move it back.
Okay, the next question is about well, out of context, is there a window where you can see more text? You can show that.
Like when we imported the book?
I believe so.
Yeah. Start a new file. So where we open up the book. Okay. And so the book, the text of the book is in the manuscript. So I'm just going to detach the manuscript for a second so we can see more of it. And then here we are in the text of it. So is that what they mean? And it would kind of work the same way. Again, you could use this in different ways. You can find the way that works for you, best for you. But as you're recording, you could put in a nav point maybe here. And when you get to the bottom of this paragraph, you could put in a nav point here if you want to, and so on and so forth. And then again, the purpose of that is that then you could go back to different parts of it if you wanted to. So yes, there's also another view of this, which we didn't get into today. It's another window. Once you've opened up a book in Hindenburg, you can view the narration view. And the idea with this is that you can have this be all that you see on the screen. And you can, here's that record enable button. And you'd be recording the same way. You can navigate through the book like this and only be looking at the text. I personally wouldn't want to do that, but it is an option. And I've actually never done it, to be totally, honest about it. But it is an option in a way that some people do this, where they only want to see the text and want to just be cycling through. What I'm doing here is I'm just hitting that forward button again and going through it.
Can I add to my question?
Yes.
Because the reason why I asked this is that every time I go to the next paragraph in the script, it makes a click sound. And
right.
I mean, that's too many clicks to remove afterwards. So I don't know what to do. Nick, I talked to Nick from Hindenburg, and he says it's because I do it on my computer, but I can hear you do that too. So I don't know what to do about it.
Well, if you wanted to keep cycling through in that way, let me see here. I'm sort of troubleshooting here and seeing if this would work. So you're recording along and you're reading in the text. And if you didn't add the nav points to it, I'm reading along. I'm clicking and doing this like this. Yes. Oh, sorry, I am adding nav points. This is what you're doing?
Yeah.
Yes. This is it's kind of one of those things where I have the same issues, especially with podcast editing and whatnot. If I click, hopefully when I click, I have a mechanical keyboard and you can definitely hear those clicks. Mm-hmm. But I've also have like a Bluetooth wireless keyboard that doesn't have the same type of membrane. So when I do click, that hopefully I'm not cycling through anything, but when I do click, that you don't hear anything. So that might be an option. Unfortunately, it's just one of those things where there's no built-in workaround for that at this time.
Okay, because you can hardly hear it when you do it, but you can hear it in the recording. Right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Okay. Especially, yeah. So that, I mean, the easiest way is honestly just to get like a $25, little keyboard that has Bluetooth with no membrane. I'm sorry, with a membrane. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. If you didn't want to, if you have an iPad or something as well, and you wanted to do it in the other way, so not uploading the book into Hindenburg, you can do that on the iPad and just be scrolling along through it that way. But that would be different than having the text of the book.
Then I need an iPad as well. So.
Okay, Jonathan, next question from Taro is normalizing audio and setting LUFS. We're getting technical now. So LUFS,
I mean, that's in the podcast realm.
It is. But you can just go through the preferences, and you can actually set up all of your normalizing settings in the preferences or properties, either or, depending on which we're looking at here. Go to advanced. Oh, this is different. So go ahead and we'll go back to properties. Yeah.
Okay.
There you go. So that's where you set your options.
Yeah. So in session properties, you have track info, the tracks themselves, which is usually just one track of audio. Styles refers to the nav points, and your book export is the formats, what you would want to do for, however you want to do that. And then in this options window here is where you could set, the quality and the bit rate and sample rate and all of that kind of stuff. In terms of, we didn't talk about this so much in this narration area here, where there are these simple controls, mute, solo. When you click on this, here's the drop-down menu for effects, and I think we'll get to the voice profiler a bit more next time.
Right.
I believe, but in this, so here are EQ, compression, and noise reduction. These top three come with Hindenburg, and they go on the track and go on the entirety of the track, and they're all meant to be very easy to use. So you'll see with the compressor, it's a one knob compressor.
Yeah.
And with the noise reduction, it's the same thing. You set the noise floor, whatever it is, and you can adjust for it here. Okay, and obviously with that, the more noise reduction that you turn on with that, you are cutting off high end. The EQ also that comes with it is this 3-band EQ, which you can adjust over here and add and take away high end. But in addition to that, at least on this one, so I'm recording with an Apogee interface, and so it automatically picks up the presets that come with that. And also I'm doing this on a Mac, and it comes with these presets here as well. The version that I have did.
Yeah, we'll get into voice profiler and noise reduction and the EQ models that we have in a different training. So that definitely coming in a later training. But moving along and sticking with what we have on this training, the other question that came up was, how do we pause in between chapters in DAISY? Which is kind of not in this training, but.
Pause in between chapters?
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean?
Tara, do you want to jump on real quick and ask your question?
I just want to answer it correctly.
And if not, if we don't get to answer all the questions, I'll actually put a link in the chat box for our support, and then we'll have all the technical questions answered today, yes, or when you send them to support. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Okay. Tara?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, Taro here. So,
hi, Tara.
Hi. I'm making DAISY format for Finnish Celia, and they want these pauses, like 3-second and 6-second pauses in between chapters and so on. So, for example, this Plex talk, it makes these pauses automatically, and I was wondering if there is a possibility, but I think it goes like you already showed, that you have to fix it like afterwards, these pauses.
Yes. So the question is, will it automatically put in while you're recording, like yes. 3 seconds of, yes, or yes. 6?
So I already got it. So
okay.
You have to make it afterwards. Yes.
Okay. So Kathy asked, will we send information regarding will we send information to our emails regarding pricing and training? Sure. It wasn't intended to, but we can. As far as the pricing, but training for sure will come in emails like we sent out today. Daniel, how do we set the amount of time for pre-roll?
Okay, that is here in preferences. And the second option, so audio, which is the basic stuff of playback, record, different things like that, where it saves it. Interface is just different things, options that you can have. I usually click this one, center playhead after zoom. You don't have to record with pre-roll, but I certainly would. But about halfway through, you have this box here where you have in milliseconds where you can set it. So this is at basically 3 if you wanted it at 2. There you go. That's how you do it. So this box here in preferences, the second tab over interface, you can adjust the pre-roll there.
Great. I want to skip one question, then come back to it. How do we export? There are different options.
Yes.
Doing so.
So up here in the top, there are a few of these options. Well, so one thing is if you wanted to just export some audio, I actually use Hindenburg when I want to convert something from an MP3 or a WAV, just because it's very easy. If I were to import a bit of audio, it's maybe a WAV file, and I wanted to export it as an MP3, well, why don't I just do that? Hold on one sec here. Okay, here's a clip of some audio. It's just looking at
I
it.
shook my head. Makes no sense.
So let's just say I just imported something into the program. It was already done, and I wanted to just export it without exporting it as an audiobook or the other stuff, which we'll talk about in a second. Over here in the upper right part of the toolbar, the 5th option over is export, and there's a drop-down menu here. And of course, there are keyboard shortcuts to this too. The third one, or Control E, or Command E, is what I'm going to select. And here, you can save it as whatever you want. And then right here in the format options, so this is, the typical stuff. You can export it where. The format, if you wanted, it is a WAV. If you wanted to change it to an MP3, you do that. You can change the quality options, anything like that. And then you hit save and it exports it out. So that's if you just want to export it like that. If you wanted to export the audiobook that you made with all of there's no document because I didn't make a manuscript. So you have to include the parts and chapters and all that stuff. And if you wanted to export as an audiobook, you can do that. And it's a similar process there of where to do that. And the third option is a little more complicated, the export for ACX. That's basically going to give us a report. And maybe we just say that for another time.
Yes.
Okay, we'll just do that.
Just looping back to ACX, actually, one question was that, do you know the difference between recording with ACX versus Hindenburg, at least in terms of the main differences?
ACX is the company or format that Audible uses to take in their audiobooks to put out on Audible. So that's what they're the company that they use for that. So they have all of the specs that your books needs to be at. So that's what it is. So it's separate from Hindenburg that way. It's a separate company. But this version of Hindenburg is set up so that the last thing you would want to do is to record an audiobook and go through all this, time, and then ship it off to ACX, and they return to you and say it doesn't meet this parameter or this or that. And so Hindenburg has been working, my understanding is, with ACX to develop this protocol so that before that happens, when you export for ACX, it's going to give a report of all the stuff that's maybe needs to be fixed or that doesn't fit their criteria, so that when you are ready to give it to them, it's a finished product all in one go.
Perfect. Jonathan, I'm going to take over your screen real quick.
Okay.
We're running short. Actually, we've gone over time. I just want to be mindful that everyone else's time here and say thank you very much for joining us today on today's call, actually on today's training. And what we did cover was Hindenburg ABC, audiobook creator, and how to record, a little bit of pre-production, and using your Epub, and tips for narrating. There's going to be a continuation of this live training. Jonathan's put together a great 3-part series that we're going to continue in future weeks. We will definitely let you know about those trainings. And just to circle back, if you do have questions about Hindenburg, just go to our website. It's the easiest resource for you to take a look at. And there is a free 30-day trial that you can sign up for, and you can mess around and definitely try out the audiobook creator. There's a question on pricing. Typically we don't, there's like different formats for webinars where you can do, like, pitch at the end. We typically don't do that. So that was, I was a little thrown off. But yes, you just go to our shop and find pricing there. For support, we've got great support, and frequently you'll have our creative director and developers answer questions directly. For specific tutorials, again, our site has a wealth of tutorials, video tutorials for you. Jonathan did a great job today. I wish we could all just, clap for you. I definitely appreciate it. Yeah, well, yeah. And we hope to see everyone at the next training. And thank you very much for spending, the past hour and almost hour and a half with us. All right. So if you're willing to make audiobooks, we're willing to help you along with that process. Thanks, guys. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you very much.